My name is Polly Adams, and the title of my thesis project this year was Enter Through the Gift Shop, Designed Objects, Images, and Identity in New York City's Art Museums. Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to walk you through my project and convince you that the evidence guests create and keep from a visit to the art museum, like items bought in the store or photos posted on social media, not only enable more meaningful experiences, but are also now important to understand while the doors to the largest cultural institutions are closed. Initially, I was interested in this relationship that people have with the art museum because I was curious to dissect my own. I've always felt oddly at home in them, so when I first moved to New York last summer, I found myself making the pilgrimage from Crown Heights to the city almost every day, looking for a bit of myself in a new place. From the Upper East Side to Chelsea, I made my way through all the famous museums I had always read about but never visited before and started seeing them in a new light. In the heat of July, New York City's art museums became my air-conditioned cultural mecca. And as the new New Yorker self-identified museum person I am, I found myself feeling like I had to be there, especially in New York, where the most famous museums have an aura of their own and are largely driven by tourists coming from far and wide. Most guests seem to feel similarly, at least in the sense that they must commemorate the experience in one way or another. Not everyone's ritual looks the same, but they often involve a sense of urgency in completing them. After watching and participating in some of this behavior for as long as I can remember, I finally started to question why and how I had bought into my own museum rituals so wholeheartedly. My research landed me in a place I earnestly never thought I would spend this much time in, the museum gift store, where the tradition of acquiring evidence from the art museum was born, and as I've come to learn, has since evolved into something much more complex than postcards and chunky jewelry. But before we dive into it, got some framing to do. For this project, I'm considering guests in art museums as two distinct entities, the individual and the institution. And initially I saw the relationship between the two as a sort of tug of war, one where the museum hoards a certain amount of societally agreed upon value and the individual simply tries to make that value their own in some way through whatever means possible. But as I quickly came to realize, the value in the art museum is not so much transferred or taken between individual and institution as much as it is established and reinforced by each party simultaneously. The relationship between the two is actually a symbiotic one. Neither entity can create or own cultural capital or value without the other. So, after a 9-month-long study investigating exactly what can and does hold together the relationship between guests and art museums, I've come to believe that the souvenirs we choose to keep and share from cultural institutions have more potential than most people give them credit for. Like a rosary is to the faithful, a gift shop tchotchke is to the fervent museum consumer. And as our worlds have gotten smaller inside our homes, we're holding on tighter to the things that recreate and represent the life outside that we've had to put on pause. So I think for museums moving forward during this time, it's helpful to know all of the touch points involved not only in maintaining the relationship between individuals and institutions, but the ones that are also capable of building it from a distance. So I've come to this idea that the relationship between the two is mediated by designed objects and images that are made or taken from the museum. But the particularly important part about this notion is that the appropriation and sharing of the same material is what enables that relationship to survive and grow. To understand what I really mean by these actions, though, it's helpful to first walk through some of my process and findings along the way. In isolation, online stores and social media accounts have proved to be invaluable resources. However, before the era of social distancing, I was able to collect my own qualitative data about how individuals visiting some of New York's famous institutions captured their experiences in real time. The majority of my research took place at the Met and MoMA because 2 of my case studies focused on their retail initiatives. Also, their archival material helped me better understand the historic precedent behind the sometimes tenuous relationships museums have with their stores. But I really spent the majority of my time at both museums talking to people. First, I spent time with participants in the galleries and stores to get more insight on their individual perspectives. For visitors taking pictures, everyone I spoke to reported that they planned on doing so before walking in. Though many were unable to cite a specific reason as to why, the majority of those who said they intended to share photos on social media reported they would use a museum hashtag or tag their location in hopes of being reposted. As a social space, it's clear to me that people go to the museum not only to see the art, but to be seen there, and photographic evidence extends that social notion outside of its walls online and elsewhere. But I also found that when visitors take more carefully composed or artful photos, they tend to cherish them more, especially when they feature other people, like their children, friends, or partners. And the people that see this behavior the most, the security guards in the gallery, report that guests go to great lengths to get the perfect Instagram-worthy moment, sometimes even endangering art in the process. In the galleries, guests are quick to admit that they want to capture the experience for themselves. In the stores, though, retail associates reported that guests often buying things for someone else. The biggest topic of conversation I had in the stores was around this idea of gift giving, and that most shoppers make sure to mention that they're there to buy things for other people or for a specific occasion rather than themselves. It got me wondering, if the overall message that both photos and items from the store sends is, "I was there," does it matter if a souvenir is created individually or by the institution? If value can be endowed on just about any object or image, what makes some more meaningful than others? When I took these ideas to a few experts, I learned museum professionals in different capacities are all ultimately thinking about ways to empower individuals to create their own value, in a way. Merchandisers, curators, and designers alike are all striving to extend the museum experience, making sure that there's something for guests to take home with them. But I also found the way the experience is extended in the retail setting specifically has proven to be quite marketable for museums, precisely because, just like the images in the galleries, the designed items on the shelf can say so much more. I'd actually wager that some of the world's most famous artists and art pieces are the most prolific partially because of what merchandise related to them stands to recreate and represent for their owners. Whether it's through playful means that aim to get a laugh, more elegant methods meant to elevate a person or their space, or even a utilitarian subtle reference busted out on a rainy day, they're all loaded with coded imagery that signal being in on the secret of being cultured or connected to art institutions that are and also serve their purposes as well. But while souvenirs made by institutions and individuals can take many forms as objects and images, in my framework, I've determined that all souvenirs primarily function as evidence, which by definition serves to verify something as true or false. And regardless as to the secondary uses of said evidence, the value and power of a souvenir is not so much in what they've been designed to do, extend the gallery experience, but in actually how they are presented, given, or exchanged between the people that collect them. So now I'm back at this idea of appropriation and sharing again. The assertion I'm making here starts with the idea that the evidence of a museum experience or relationship is mediated by objects and images. But it ends with this distinction that they are made more meaningful through acts of appropriation and sharing, when they're able to be made more personal and given as gifts that say more than "I was there." And I explore this idea through 4 separate essays that comprise my thesis portfolio using case studies specific to New York that reveal souvenirs, whether they're personal, gifted, or broadcasted online, as objects and images that come to life in the hands of their owners outside the context of the art museums that they come from. But now, on the other side of this writing, I feel like I have to come clean about one thing while I look towards the future. Before the COVID-19 crisis started, I was really wrestling with my subject because it felt fairly insignificant, like there wasn't a lot of action to be taken with any of the material I was putting together. But the uncertainty of this global moment has shifted the significance of this work for me in terms of why the evidence of a relationship with the art museum is important after all. Not only for institutions to survive while they have to be closed, but also on an individual level. While we can't collect evidence in person, audiences are being encouraged to make do with what they've already got. They're also counting on museums to help them invent other ways of preaching, connecting, and spreading the gospel remotely. And it looks like all the believers are already creating more intimate means of doing this with imagery provided by the museum. Museum staff and audiences are all exploring new ways of evidencing their relationship to one another at home. So I think even when the Great Hall is open again, the way we go to and interact with the art museum is likely forever changed by this moment. It's difficult to say what the future holds for art museums right now with any certainty, but if there's one thing I do know now, it's that these days at home with the tools at our disposal, we're all just looking for one thing: evidence that there's a whole wide world out there waiting for us to come back to. Thank you.